You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network. This is the Thunderquack Podcast, the official podcast of Thunderquack Podcast Network, where anything can happen. So strap yourselves in and hold on to your butts. It's Thunderquack time!
Hello and welcome back to the Thunderquack Podcast, the official podcast of thunderquack.com, which you can get early every Tuesday over at patreon.com/thunderquack, just like our Patreon producers, Brian Murawski and JJ Samuel do, or you can wait and get it late every Friday on podcast services across the galaxy. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen.
And I'm your other host, Amanda Kunkin.
And last week was a bummer episode, right? And
nothing like the 50th episode to bring everybody down.
Yeah. It was unavoidable because even now a week out, another week out, I should say, from those events, it's like stuff becomes even more apparent that it was even, I think, scarier than we knew at the time. What some of the stuff that was happening and some of the people that were behind it, but we kind of couldn't avoid it. You know, people try and overthrow the most powerful country in the world. It's kind of we have a podcast that talks politics every once in a while.
You need to talk about it.
It would have been weird to not talk about it, as we said last week. But we are 2 days away from inauguration as we record this on a Monday night. I guess a day and a half, really. And so by the time that those of you who listen to it late on Fridays are hearing this, I don't know. The world could very well be a very different place. But we are recording this in I don't know, like a scary but calm before the storm, sort of,
or before the like newness and.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there will be chaos on Wednesday. I just don't know where the chaos will be and how bad it's going to be. But something will happen. I guarantee you on Wednesday, something will happen. But I think that the inauguration will be fine because they've put up fences and like it's, right. But I think that there's a lot of rumblings of stuff that it's going to happen in other places in the US. That's scary. So hopefully everybody is safe. Hopefully everything is okay. But we
haven't got there yet. So we're gonna talk about nerdy things.
Yeah, so we're not gonna talk about politics anymore after this intro, and we're just gonna talk about.
Man, you jinxed it.
Escapism.
You can't say that at the beginning of the podcast. You know how we detour. Like we're
not
don't
gonna
ever mean to. Okay, good.
Just don't talk about it.
We'll keep ourselves on track.
Be in control of your own destiny there.
Whoa.
It's
wow.
you determine whether or not we.
Someone asked me a really innocuous question that was about like a post-pandemic world, and it was really simple. It was, after all COVID stuff is done, are you still gonna live in Vancouver? And it was this like terrible sense of like, oh my gosh, I have to make like life choices about like when the world gets back to a place where we can go do stuff. Do I still want to live in a really expensive city, even though I don't have to live in that city in order to work at my now remote job? And I just like, it was this like terrible existential crisis in the middle of, I mean, I know there's a lot of other stuff happening in the world, but it is also sort of an odd thing.
Yeah. I mean, Crystal and I have had that conversation quite a bit, sort of since this started and even before then, because my brother last year moved to the Okanagan.
Yeah.
Right before everything kind of went crazy. So we're kind of talking about it at that point because they bought a much bigger place than our place. Because you can, because places are not as expensive, although it's still pretty expensive in the Okanagan.
Yeah.
But but you can get a detached house reasonably. as opposed to here where it's very difficult to do that. But for me, it always comes back to like the art and culture component of it. I don't, I can't imagine having lived in the Lower Mainland, in a major metropolitan city, and having lived in the Okanagan, and then coming back to the city. I can't imagine going back to the Okanagan at this point for me. Like, because like I just, especially once the girls are older and Crystal and I can go back to enjoying life, um, other than kid oriented activities. Um, like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do in Penticton or Kelowna?
Yeah,
on
exactly.
a Friday night or a Saturday night? And the answer to that is very obvious on Facebook when I look at what many of my peers from high school still do on the weekends. And I don't want to be too judgmental about it, but I am going to be judgmental about it because, like, I just don't think that in your mid to late 30s getting trashed on the weekend is really the way to go about your life. It's and I don't mean like having a couple of drinks. I mean like getting sloppy drunk and and uh, uh, you know throwing things in a fire is what I imagine most of them are doing. Um, it just doesn't sound like it's that
So
interesting to
salty.
me. And
Yeah.
that appears to me to be what a lot of people in the Okanagan do for fun on the weekends,
I mean,
or they go, or
there's not
like
a lot to do out
outdoor
here.
activities and whatever, which
Yeah.
is not my
Well,
interest.
I was gonna say that's the
Um,
thing is like there's a lot of sporty like I'm like, what does my sister do? And I'm like, oh, she goes. They're just she skis and they're out doing
Hiking and
camping and
cycling and
hiking, and I'm
yeah,
like, that's not
no,
cool. I'll
no,
go hang out at a cafe and go for brunch. Like I'm like,
yeah,
that's
I
what I
want to,
like
yeah,
to do.
exactly. I want to go for brunch. I want to go do some yoga in a really like
Man, remember
fancy,
brunch? Oh,
yeah,
so
fancy
good.
building with really nice facilities. And
Yeah,
I want to go see live theater that isn't put on by five people that I know.
I know.
Um,
Oh, why yoga with its steam? It's like
exactly.
sauna and
Exactly. Oh
oh
my god.
man,
What I would
the
give
before
to
times.
go into a yoga studio and I not keep up with the most like
I go
chill
for Tuesday.
hatha ever.
I go for the tea and the sauna. That's why I
Yeah.
go to yoga. Why yoga is for anyways, yeah, it's
Um yeah, I mean like we're sounding very Vancouverite at the moment, I but yeah, and like to be able to like go to Granville Island, to be able to go to Stanley Park, to be able to go to like to go downtown. Like haven't been downtown.
and just shop in stores for no
Yeah.
reason
Yeah.
with no agenda.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we haven't talked about stuff that we want. I will say today is my mom. I was like feeling pretty anxious throughout the day. Like I came upstairs a couple times to just sit in the living room and just for like 5 minutes. Like I only had like 5 minute breaks when my meetings would end a little early, and I would come upstairs. And I'm like, I'm not feeling well today. Like I didn't know what it was. I was just a little off. My mom said that the third Monday in January is has been branded very very much. I think branded by like travel companies, but it's been branded as one of the most depressing days of the year
Mm.
because I think you're far enough into January that you're like, well, is this year going to be different or not? Like, I feel like the first two Mondays you can sort of just like keep going, but like, anyways, so it does make sense that we're
Yeah,
talking,
that's
waxing
fair.
poetic a little at the
I I
beginning of the
I think honestly it's
yeah.
the fact that we are like we're on the other side of the pandemic, I think. And
Hmm.
like the numbers are going down in BC. I mean like they got really out of control going into the holidays. And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
finally starting to curve back down, which is positive and great and awesome. But the other part of it is that like vaccine distribution is happening, and people are getting vaccinated, which like I think it's still going to be several months before you and I can get vaccinated, but with everybody who gets vaccinated, the world gets a little bit safer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so like we are like I said,
Slowly
we're on
edging
the other
towards.
side of it right now. And so I think that we're at the point where we can start thinking about what life looks like after
Yeah.
this, and what does going back to work look like. So for my job, they sublet the other half of our office. So like they reduced the number of desks in our office by half, um with the intention of like, don't come back.
Yeah.
Right, like
Yeah.
if you're happy working from home, work from home. And we have hotel desks now that it's like nobody like owns a desk, like there's not like a nameplate or anything like that. So just like bring your laptop in, sit down at a desk and work if you're going to come into the office, but you really don't need to. So for me, it's like I know I will come into the office for meetings and that's it.
Yeah.
Like I'll come in to
Yeah.
run workshops and stuff like that, the things that are a part of my job that are much more difficult through telecommuting. But when it comes to like the actual like day-to-day stuff that I have to do, designing and building websites and stuff like that, when I'm doing that stuff, like the actual sort of feet on the ground marketing part of it, like I it's better. I like especially when the girls can go back to more full-time childcare, and I don't have to contend with that 2 days a week, of them sort of like being around and being a distraction. It's like being at home and working from home is preferable,
Oh yeah.
because
Get a
I can
lot
do things at
done.
my own pace without somebody looking over my shoulder, and
Mm-hmm.
take breaks when I need to take breaks, step away from the computer when I need to step away from it without anybody sort of going like, what are you doing? Right. And
Yeah.
then the other part of it, like the flip side to that is that when I am focused, I'm focused.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
there's nobody to socialize with. There's no, like, I've got video games and TV or whatever, but like today, while I was working, I was watching Hot Fuzz, the Edgar
Oh,
Wright
nice.
movie, right?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I stopped to watch the climax of the movie because that's when that movie gets really, really good. But for the most part, it's just like it's on and it's background noise, and I was focused working building a website, and that is so much more enjoyable than sitting at a desk. um
Are you not allowed to watch movies at work? Because
no,
like no, it's very like all of the people at my work because they all
yours
are
is a
doing
very
servicing and
different
stuff.
environment from mine.
Yeah.
Yours is
Yeah,
a
that's
very
fair.
different environment from mine,
I just
but
but for me, like production, it's different, obviously.
yeah.
Like I don't even check Facebook when I'm working. I actually not even really when I'm at home, I'm just too busy. But it always like it's a thing that always makes me like really jealous where I'm like all these surfers get to sit there watching Netflix while they do their work because they can, right? Like it's just you just have it on in the
Yeah.
background. So
Yeah.
but,
Well, we all creative types worth their salt have ADD, so
yeah, that's
uh,
fair. You do.
it's almost necessary.
Yeah.
Like if I don't, like, I can't wash the dishes without a podcast in my ears. It doesn't work.
Interesting.
I need it in order to focus in. Like
Yeah,
it's
that's
just the
fair.
way
That's
that my
fair.
brain works. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's and the great thing is that lately I just got this new iPad, right? And I've been drawing a lot with it, and I it's the greatest thing for meetings, and because the meetings are like, I don't have my camera on during meetings, so nobody knows that I'm sitting drawing, but
Yeah.
like for me it helps me focus, right? Like it helps me tune into what people are saying, and like it helps me with active listening in the same way that like they say that like a fidget spinner helps you focus, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um because it just kind of gives your hands something to do so that you're not getting distracted. I so yeah, like I love it because hopefully nobody that I work with is listening. I don't know. But I'm sort of able to multitask like that. I'm able to feel like I'm accomplishing something in a meeting, where my meetings are a lot of sitting around listening to other people talk, and then interjecting when things get off course, or I think that
Mhm.
something's going in the wrong direction. But I or I'm asked a direct question.
Right.
Um but for me, for the most part, I sit and I listen, and then jump in when I'm needed. I Which might sound surprising to a lot of people who listen to me on podcasts, where I don't really do that. But it's much better when I'm drawing and then just sitting back and listening. Because I'm a little bit less inclined to jump in with my 2 cents. I'm like, oh, I'll just keep working.
That's fair.
But yeah, I mean, like even doing like on task stuff, like when I'm in the middle of building a website or something like that, or I'm like, if I get up and I'm in the groove in the morning, and then it's like, oh, I've got this meeting for an hour,
right? Yeah.
Which, like this meeting could have been an email, right? Like that sort of thing. Yeah. Because I sit in a lot of those types of meetings. Like I can still keep working that way. So
that's my biggest fear, is that there's so many of those meetings at my work. But I'm like, no, man, these meetings are usually, we just like, anyways, whatever, it's fine. I'm not gonna get too.
Yeah, I don't know. My advice to you is to not waste the time of the people who do the actual work. But if you want to have meetings with people who make decisions, it like that's what being a decision maker is.
Yeah, it's like right? Sitting in these meetings all day. Yeah.
The frustrating part of my job is that I am both a decision maker and the person who does the work, because of the size of our business, especially the way that it's kind of shrunk during COVID-19. So like even more than previously, I'm asked to do a lot of the stuff that in another environment a junior would be doing.
Right.
But so that can be frustrating, where it's like, if we could just make a decision, like if we can just do this quickly, then I can get back to the deadline that you guys have set for me, that I have to hit. So that's my only piece of advice. The people who actually have to do the work, like the animators and artists and whatnot, that actually have like deliverables, leave them out of it, because for the most part they probably don't need to be in a meeting. But
we do. I like that. We generally speak.
Yeah.
To that. I love that we're not
let the
talking
decision
about
makers talk for hours and hours, because it means that they're not standing over the workers' desks, questioning everything that they're doing. Right.
That's not what we do. But sure.
Anyways. You want to talk about something geeky? I
want to talk about nerdy things, because
you want to talk about Wonder Woman?
That we were talking about nerdy things. I mean, I feel like we should talk about Wonder Woman. I don't know how much I want to talk about Wonder Woman, because I feel like it's just going to be you talking about Wonder Woman. I don't know how much I have to say about Wonder Woman.
Give me your review. I want to know. I honestly haven't seen you talk about it on social media.
I know, because I haven't been talking about it at all, because I just sort of was like, I'm going to watch this on Christmas. I'm going to make my family watch it. It's going to be fun. I did not realize that my sister hadn't seen the first Wonder Woman, and I was very upset that I didn't realize this until I was literally hitting play on the movie, and I was like, wait, how have you not watched the first Wonder Woman? Anyways, so
you've surfaced something that wasn't a flaw to me before, but is now, which is that 1984 does not work if you haven't seen the first movie.
No, and I was like, oh no, this is gonna be so confusing.
It means nothing. I don't even think it's confusing. Like, I think the story is presented in a very straightforward manner.
But it just doesn't mean as much, because if you don't know who Steve Trevor is, it's anyways.
Yeah.
So that was one thing, and I'm kind of like, okay, but you get it. You she got enough, and also my sister's not super picky about stuff. But anyways, I did like in Wonder Woman, because you see all the trailers and you're like, how do they bring Steve back? And I do like that it's so part of the plot, right? Like, him being there is the thing that is the problem, right? Like, because it's one of those things where I didn't want it to be like a peripheral thing where it's like time travel or some magic, but it was actually like literally the magic rock thing, right? It was like, that was what it was, right? It's like the thing that she has to fight is the reason that he is there. And so I will say that for me, that was what I was looking for, is like, how do they bring back Steve Trevor in a way that I don't go, ugh, that was so superfluous. But it so I was very happy in that regard, that I saw what had happened, and it all made sense. Also, the action was what I wanted it to be. Pedro Pascal's character was okay, but also a little, I didn't fully and this is, I think I'm interested to hear your take because I don't have children.
Yeah.
But it seemed very much like his personality was sort of something that didn't really contend with being a dad. And then being a dad wound up being more important than everything else he had gone for the rest. Like, it was very unclear where it was like, was he doing it because he wanted to prove that he could to his son? Or like, there was a few things for me that I was like, I didn't quite follow through the like, I'm going to take over the world plot. So it wasn't necessarily the Wonder Woman stuff that bothered me. It was the like, what was the end goal to Pedro Pascal's character? I don't even remember what his actual
Maxwell Lord.
Maxwell
Maxwell
Lord.
Lord.
I
He's a
didn't
pretty
really,
major character in the comics, but
I didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
So to me, that was the biggest thing for me where I was like, I didn't understand. I actually don't now, even looking back on it, I don't understand what the end game was. And so for me, that's my biggest thing is because if I don't understand that, then I don't understand how she stopped it. And I don't understand how the kid helped stop it. Like, it was very, like, that to me was the thing that was like the loose thread. But as a plot device to bring back Steve Trevor and have that relationship again, it worked.
Like, so what you just said as like the pro essentially to me is the biggest con of the film.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Which is that the whole plot exists to serve the purpose of bringing Steve Trevor back. And so that is obviously the heart of Diana's story. And I would be fine with that if not for a couple of very, very big mistakes, which I'll talk about in a second. But in terms of the core plot, we're gonna get into spoilers here, obviously. So if you haven't seen Wonder Woman 1984 yet, don't listen. I guess,
or if you care about that,
or if you care. But yeah, I would say save yourself the 3 hours and just listen to us talk about it. Because at least with this, you can do the dishes while you're listening. I as I mentioned before, but so the whole purpose of like, I have no problem with magic in the DCEU, because magic is one of the things that I think really differentiates DC from Marvel. Not that there isn't magic in Marvel, but magic in Marvel, especially in the MCU, is a science of its own, right? Everything magical in Marvel, and they've taken this like an even further step in the MCU, is tied to like immutable laws of the universe, right? So there are rules to everything. Magic in the DC universe is very much the ace up the sleeve, right? In a lot of storytelling. So like Superman's a great example of like, Superman can't be stopped by anything but kryptonite, right? Except that's not true, because magic is his other weakness that a lot of writers forget about. And they don't want to go there because, well, then we have to explain magic to our audience. It's like, well, you actually don't with the DC universe if you're playing with the whole DC universe and not just Superman or Batman, right? Which, like, the movies tend to just play with Superman and Batman, and then everybody else is just a bit player in a Superman or Batman story. So I love that with both Wonder Woman films, they have gone into the magic components of it, and with this one especially, I mean, like, it's literally the power of a wish, right? And I love that it ties back into the gods. It was a huge misstep that it didn't tie back into Circe, because like that's, to me, like, it feels like they're saving Circe. And that we know that there will be a third Wonder Woman movie. It's already been greenlit, so that's going to happen. I think that we're going to get Rogue Squadron first, and then Wonder Woman 3 will happen. Like, we'll go into production after that. But it seems like they've kept Cersei off the table for some reason.
But she's the
But
one that they talked about in this movie, right? They talked about her, didn't
what do you
they?
mean? When did they
No,
talk about
they didn't.
Cersei?
No, they didn't. Okay, then
I
never
don't
mind
think
then.
so.
Okay,
Um,
never mind.
but
Carry on.
Cersei's always messing with Diana. Like that's the thing in
Okay.
the comics is that Cersei is like from Greek mythology, like basically essentially jealous of Diana and who she is. So
Right.
this stone showing up and having this power and being this monkey's paw and all of that stuff would have worked so much better for me. And Pedro Pascal's character, like Maxwell Lord's motivation towards the end of the movie, would have worked so much better for me if we would have shown up at the final confrontation and it would have turned out, oh, actually, like Circe is the god who created this stone in the first place,
Right.
in order to mess with mortals, and and has it out for Diana, and we're gonna find out why.
But
right?
we actually don't know that she didn't do it, right? Because we never really find out exactly who
Sure,
creates
of course.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because they never name the god that's responsible for it. But it just like that to me felt like such a missed opportunity. But I don't know, like you could be right, maybe they're planting a seed for later, which again, something that the DCEU is guilty of is planting seeds that never get like we never reap what's sown in the DCEU, because every 5 minutes they're changing lanes, right? Like it's they can't be consistent for long enough that any of the, I mean, for God's sake, the one pod that was open on the Kryptonian ship in Man of Steel is a setup for something, right? I don't know what they were originally planning. Supergirl makes the most sense, but it also, like, it was also a perfect setup for, like, hey, this is where the gods in the Greek mythology of this world came from, right? Is that they're
cool.
Kryptonians, right? Like let's set that up, that actually it turns out that Zeus and Hades and Poseidon were actually just all Greek gods.
That would be
or sorry, we're all
just,
Kryptonians. All these Greek gods were Kryptonians, and then we tie that into Atlantis. We tie that into Wonder Woman. We tie that into whatever we need to, right? And then everything else can come from the mother box, and we're good. We've now created this connected world. Well, they didn't do any of that. They just went, well, there are also Greek gods, but we're never going to show you a Greek god, except for, I guess we do see Ares in the first Wonder Woman, but I guess in Justice League we saw all the gods fighting the.
I was gonna say, yeah, we saw stuff. Yeah, we saw stuff.
But it's like, but it is so confusing the way that they use that stuff, because they're not explicit about it, and yet when it comes to the story, everything is tell don't show, right? Like so much of it is like, hey, in case it wasn't clear, which it's still not clear anyways, even though they go to painstaking effort to be like, hey, in case it wasn't clear, this is another guy's body that Steve Trevor is inhabiting, and to everybody else it looks like this guy, but for some reason Diana sees Steve. Or does she see Steve, or is that just like a head? Storytelling device for us? Like where is the line here? And we don't want to spend, we're going to spend way more time talking about it than we should, but we're also not going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the fact that I'm going to use a difficult word here, but Diana and Steve takes part in this. They rape that guy. They use his body without his consent. Right? Like it's implied that they slept together that first night.
Right.
And this man has no agency. Now, look, if Gal Gadot walked up to him and said, "Hey, I would like to make love to you," would he have said no? Probably not, because it's Gal Gadot, right? But that doesn't change the fact, because that would be like the first argument that I would hear back from a lot of guys, right? Is like, oh, well, I wouldn't kick her out of bed, right? That sort of stupid nonsense. And it's like, that's not the issue. Whether or not you would deny Gal Gadot is not the issue here. The issue is that he wasn't given a choice,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And for her to act so counter to her ideology and what that character stands for me, it's why the end of the movie doesn't work for me, is that we spent 2.5 hours with her just completely disregarding her own moral code, when what we've established in the DCEU is that Diana is the moral center, right?
Right.
Like that when Bruce and Clark are off course,
Mm-hmm.
she's the one who brings them back
Right.
repeatedly in Batman v Superman and Justice League, right? Like
Right.
she's the one who makes the difference.
Right.
She is the conscience of the Justice League. That's what they've set up for this character. And then we're going to go back to this story, and instead of telling a story of her being challenged in that and having to be conflicted about it, we instead just see her, for the vast majority of the film, ignore the responsibility of the situation that she's created,
Right.
right? She made the wish. She recognizes that this is another human being whose life has been taken over by this magic. She
Right.
knows the gods. She knows
Right.
them intimately, right?
Right.
And yet she doesn't, and she says it early on when they're talking about the stone, of it's all, there's always a price. They never, the gods never give anything for free,
Yeah.
right? They create these objects in order to mess with mortals. um and yet when she gets her wish and instantly recognizes what happened, instantly recognizes where it came from,
Right.
she doesn't immediately go, I can't trust this. This
Right.
is not, because she's so in love with Steve, who's been dead for 60 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's so antithetical to what they've set that character up as,
Right.
and yet it doesn't explore why it's antithetical, right?
Right.
Like we wait until the beginning of Act 3, which by that point you've lost interest in the film because the movie's way too long. The whole Egypt sequence shouldn't be in it, but
Oh yeah, I was.
there's fun
Yeah,
stuff. Like, don't get me
fun
wrong.
stuff. The fight is cool, but yeah.
The truck chase is a clear homage to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I think they do a really great job with it. But but it's a waste. It's spectacle for spectacle's sake, and it just it makes the movie longer
I
than it needs to
also
be.
don't understand the point of it. Like again, it's the idea of like, what are they there to save?
Well,
Why did he go there? What
and
is
that's the
the
thing, is that
like?
like when I say, like, there's so much tell and not showing,
Yeah,
and yet the stuff that we need to know, which is like what exactly is happening to Maxwell Lord.
yeah,
First of all, like, we don't get enough of him established early on in the movie,
yeah.
um
To
in order to
understand
know,
anything that's
what's
like,
our
yeah,
baseline for this guy.
yeah.
Like what are the lines that he is willing to cross and is not willing to cross, because
Hmm.
we kind of get the idea that he's a bit of a con man, but we also get the idea that he truly believes in what he's doing,
Yeah,
right? Like when he says, like, oh, everybody buy into this thing, because then we'll all be rich together. It's like, to me, that and the son are actually the biggest mistakes with that character.
mm,
Maxwell Lord should have just been a cut and dry Gordon Gecko Greed is good character. Just like, no nuance to it whatsoever in order for it to work for me as a villain, right? The nuanced character is Cheetah, right?
yeah. Oh
Like
yeah, yeah,
that,
yeah.
like when we have both of them where we're like, are we rooting for you guys or not? Like, it's
Yeah,
unclear
that's
whether or
true.
not I'm supposed to feel bad that you're turning evil. Um
Yeah,
like it If they would have made it clear that the thing the stone takes from you isn't like this sort of amorphous, like vaporous idea of the thing that you love the most, right? Because it's like,
right.
well,
Yeah,
then immediately when Pedro Pascal makes the wish, his sons should have just died.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or should have like been strucken with some disease, and like he should have
Yeah.
realized halfway through the movie, like, oh, he's dying because of this,
Yeah.
right? It's instead, to me, it should have been like, it takes your soul. That's the price, right? Like,
Yeah.
is that, and so then, to me, that one thing would have made all of the other stories really clear. Why does every one of these civilizations descend into chaos? Well, because people get exactly what they want. Well, if everybody gets exactly what they want, then nobody covets anything, and why can't everybody just be cool? It's like, well, because then, you know, you're taking, if they lose their soul, if they lose the thing that makes them a decent human being, their moral compass, then everybody, you got what you want. Now you want what everybody else has, right? Like, you just, greed becomes the core of it, right? So if that were the case, then it's very clear, Diana doesn't have to lose her powers. That's dumb. Like, to me, it's like, that's the Spider-Man 2, like, oh, I don't know if I want to be Spider-Man anymore. I would rather be in love than be Spider-Man. It's like, which is dumb in Spider-Man 2, and it's dumb in this. Or it's like, are my powers worth, losing my powers worth loving this person? It's like, well, it's not that person, it's a monkey's paw, like, you know that. Anyways, if the price was Diana's soul, then it makes sense that partway through the movie she'd be like, I don't care that, like, and it, like, because if it's Steve coming back, then you have a perfect opportunity for Steve to go, Diana, like, don't you understand what's happening here? Like, two things are happening. You've taken this man's life and you've ripped me from heaven. He explains that in the film. He's like, I can't describe where I was. I just know that it was good. Right? Like, it was good, and I was happy, and I was at peace. And she's just like, oh, cool, neat. And then they have a fashion show. And you're like, wait a second. No, because this is like a whole season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where she's like, it comes to a head in the best episode of the whole series. Not like the best in terms of like artfulness, because that's the one with the with no dialogue. What, I can't remember, with the gentleman.
Hush.
Right? Hush. Yeah. That's the best episode. That's one of the best episodes of television ever. But the best episode of Buffy is Once More with Feeling, where that comes to a head when she like sings basically like, I was in heaven. You guys brought me back from the dead, and like took away like and now I can't get back because now I'm undead. Like, now I'm the same as a vampire. Like, my soul is tarnished, right? Like there's like, that's such a great element of the story of Buffy. Like, it's so good. It makes those last couple seasons that are mostly awful totally worth it. And they bring that up. They broach the subject in this movie, and yet they never return to that. He never challenges her on that and goes like, look, the 80s are neat. It was fun flying a fighter jet. Okay, that was all cool, and I love that we got to spend this time together, but I was in heaven. You took away eternal happiness from me so that you could have like essentially like a pleasure of the flesh, right? Like there's something.
How crass, Mike.
Well, like, but that's honestly it, right? Because the lesson that we learned in the first Wonder Woman was that it doesn't matter that Steve dies. He loves her and she loves him, and that'll never go away. That's immutable, right? Like, it's like, that's in the universe now. It's part of the universe. It's what saves the day, right? Is their love for each other. So it's like having him back physically is just because Diana is lonely, because instead of embracing the world, she's chosen to turn herself off from it. Now, they're written into a corner there because that's what Batman v Superman and Justice League says that she did, so she has to, right? So like it's the kind of, it's Wonder Woman 1984 suffers from a lot of the problems that the Star Wars sequel trilogy do, where it's like, in order to craft this story, they created a bunch of these contrivances, like Luke Skywalker having disappeared, that then you have to spend the next two movies explaining to the audience why that happened, right? And the ramifications of of that decision, right?
Right.
And it's very similar here of like they like why haven't we ever seen Wonder Woman before if she's been around for hundreds of years? Well, because her boyfriend died, so she shut herself off. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
but we're gonna make a movie where her boyfriend comes back to life. Okay, we're gonna ignore the consequences of doing that for the most part, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so the conversation that they have is so brief, it's so surface. It's nothing to do with Steve. It's nothing to do with Diana. It's to do with the world. Which like
Right.
they take something that is such a personal, close story
Mm-hmm.
and they turn it into like this is about everybody else. And it's like,
Right.
but this isn't about everybody else. This is about the two of you. And that's what it
Right.
should be about. Right.
Right.
If you turned that and it was not you're losing your powers, you're becoming immortal, you can be killed, but which is a very selfish thing to be worried about. But instead it's Diana, like the price for having me back is that you've lost what makes you a hero. And the
Right.
world needs you to be a hero, not your powers to be a hero.
Yeah.
It's again like I'm gonna
Oh
there's
yeah.
a bunch of parallels to Ray and Tross and all this stuff. It's not about the power. If Wonder
Right.
Woman had no power, she'd still be Diana Prince, right?
Right.
Like if Superman loses his powers, he's still Superman. I don't care. You take
Right.
away his powers, he's still Superman,
Right.
right? The powers are a tool. That's not, you give them to somebody else and they become, you give them to Lex Luthor and he becomes a despot, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get Zod. That's the whole point
Yeah.
of Zod existing as a character, is
Yeah.
to show us that this is what
Yeah.
happens when you give those powers to someone other than Superman.
Right.
It's not the powers that make Wonder Woman Wonder Woman. It is Diana Prince. It is Diana of Themyscira, who was raised by her mother and her mentors to be the person that she is, and the influence of Steve Trevor that created that character, like that strength of character, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That makes her a hero, that saves the day in Batman v Superman and is part of Justice League, like all of that stuff. Like that's the core, that's the central part of that. So if Steve says to her like you're losing that and the world needs that more than you need me, like you let me go because
Right.
I don't want to be alive in a world without Wonder Woman.
Right.
That is a core to a story like that because then you have your foils of Maxwell Lord, who was evil to be, like, let's say he doesn't have a relatable part to his story, but he's just evil to begin with. And
Right.
then you've got Cheetah, what's her name, um
Barbara.
Barbara, who like starts off as this lovable klutz character,
Mm-hmm.
right, that we immediately identify with, um and she's been turned evil. So you have these two foils of like of evil becoming more evil
Right.
for the sake of power and greed. And then you've got another person who's being corrupted by that evil, and then Diana, who has to wrestle with that inside of herself and make the decision. The strength of her character has to overcome all of that in a way that Maxwell Lord never could, and
Right.
Barbara can't because of the trauma that she's experienced in her life, right?
Right.
Because of her damage and her baggage. But Wonder Woman can, because Diana, the princess of the Amazons,
Mm-hmm.
is that character. So
Right.
she overcomes that, gives back her wish, and and then when she makes her speech at the end, we go, oh yeah, like she stands for something. But when she
Right.
makes her speech at the end and she's looking right down the barrel of the gun, like into the camera at us, it's like none of this means anything because you raped a dude in this movie. like it doesn't, like, and there's no in story justification for why that happened,
That
right?
might be that. That probably is definitely why you don't see him as not Steve Trevor,
Yeah.
because they want to get rid of that entirely. Like
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
yeah, the
Which to
idea of
me, it, if you're not, this is just like the whole like having Janna and the other stormtroopers in Rise of Skywalker. If you're gonna open the door a crack and then not go through it, why did you open the door?
Mhm.
Right? Why did you make that part of the story if that wasn't going to be integral to the story, that you're denying this other human being a life
I
in
thought
order to
that
get what you want.
and I will say that the one thing that because I haven't thought about it, because while I was watching it, I actually had thought he died. So I thought that Steve had taken over somebody who had otherwise died. And I'm now just realizing that's why I wasn't bothered by it while I was watching it.
Yeah.
Because in my implication, he was like using a body that nobody else was using. But now I'm realizing, because they brought him in the end, it's very much a person that actually existed.
Yeah. No. He was just inhabiting somebody else's body. Yeah. A life for a life sort of thing. Which to me, it's like that you're already dealing with magic. We didn't need that element to it.
Yeah, I don't know why he couldn't have just been brought back.
Yeah, exactly. So it was to me, it was a weird choice, and I think it was. I don't fault the filmmakers on this one. Like, I don't think that it was Patty Jenkins that and maybe that's just me wanting Rogue Squadron to be good. So, but the first Wonder Woman was a good movie, right? I am not one of the people who will tell you that it's like the best DCEU movie, because I don't think that it is. I think it's a very serviceable superhero movie that stands for something very important, which is, that it's one of was it the first female led superhero movie? I don't remember at this point, but
Catwoman and Elektra.
Oh yeah, oof, yikes. It was the first successful one, right?
Yeah.
It was the first one that so that makes more sense. It's the first one that shows the world that, like, hey, these can be profitable, right? So in terms of like what that movie stands for, I'm totally behind that. In terms of that movie being any better than Thor: The Dark World, I don't know. I don't think so. Like, I don't think that it, like, I would put Wonder Woman sort of like in the mid to low tier of the MCU if we're comparing it to that stuff. It's not Iron Man. It's not Winter Soldier,
I don't know.
or Civil War.
I
right?
quite enjoyed the first Wonder Woman.
I quite enjoyed the first Wonder Woman as well, but I don't think that anything about the story in the first Wonder Woman movie is like revolutionary or like mind-blowingly good. And the third act is the same third act from every superhero movie. She's got to fight CG, right?
Yeah.
Which the third act in this Wonder Woman movie is even worse than that, because like the fight with Cheetah is just eye-gougingly bad, in my opinion. Those effects for Cheetah were a mistake. She should have just been in a costume. She should have just. I think like there could have been like a little bit of something, like a little bit of a physical transformation, but like
I thought it worked, like the way that, I don't know.
I guarantee you are in the minority on this.
Yeah, probably.
You are in the minority on this, because the vast majority of people that I've talked to and that like discourse that I've seen is like, wow, so they went full on cats with it. Like,
I guess so. Hey, yeah.
There's a reason why they didn't show us in any of the trailers, and it wasn't to save the reveal. It's because it did not.
They showed her jumping in the trailer.
In one of the last ones,
yeah.
But we didn't get a good look at it. We never got a good look at it in the trailer, and we get a good look at it in the movie, and it doesn't work for me. And like, look, is it faithful to the comics? Yes, but this is, to me, this is the thing that the DCEU cannot figure out that the MCU has figured out. There's a time to be faithful to the comics, and there's a time to fix what the comics do wrong.
Right.
And adaptation is not about transferring something from one medium into another. It's about knowing what's going to work and what needs to be tweaked. And the outfit that we see her in when she beats the crap out of Wonder Woman and Steve in the White House.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If they could have just taken that and just notched it one more notch instead of cranking it to 11 and then breaking off the knob, right? Like, if they would have just gone one more notch to where, like, the next, when she's sitting in the plane, she says to, like, because I like all that stuff. I really like the Cheetah storyline. I think of all of the stories in the movie, it's the strongest one. And I honestly think that Kristen Wiig gives the best performance. And then we get to the third act, and Kristen Wiig has disappeared, and we've replaced her with a bad CG character, as opposed to in the MCU where we replace our characters with good CG characters like Thanos and Hulk. But if they had just like maintained that performance level with the character, and not just turned her into a CG monster, I think I would have cared a lot more. Like if we if she
That's fair.
if we would have come back and she would have had like because I could see like a version of her where like the hair is kind of like blending into her face,
right?
Which they kind of do, but then they give her like the full CG cat face, right? And give her fangs, right? Like give her like some feline attributes, but don't go full on like turning her into a cat person. You know what I mean? And like give her claws, give her a tail, maybe even give her cat ears or something like that. But let's find like a blend, like let's find like a middle ground here where we're still seeing Kristen Wiig, and we still get a performance from that character, but we do get to see that like, oh, she's turned herself into something else. Like she's left her humanity behind, because that's the point, right? Is that like from a storytelling perspective it works. Like the plot point of it works, of like when Diana sees her and goes, oh, Barbara, what have you done, right? Yeah. Like you've, as opposed, like, because they both hit that climax of their story, or not climax, but like that turning point in their stories of like, is Wonder Woman gonna give up on the world in order to keep Steve, or is she gonna renounce her wish and save the world? And then with Barbara on the other side of that, she's like, no, the opposite, I'm gonna double down to the point like where my humanity is gone. Barbara isn't here anymore, right? So yeah, I don't know, I think that there was like there was a better path forward with that I think would have served the story a little bit better. But that is like the least of my problems with the movie. Like the characterization of Diana, I think, is so off in this one that it just kind of takes me out of the movie the whole time. Like she, I don't know, like the first act is so good with her meeting Barbara and the two of them becoming friends. Like I love all of that stuff. And then the second that Steve shows up, you're like, okay, what's actually going on? Because like the whole time, the only storyline that makes clear sense and is not muddled by questions of like, wait, why are we doing this, is Barbara's storyline of the like of her losing her humanity, her like the homeless guy that she's friends with, that is like oh, like what did you do? You killed that guy, basically. And her being like, mind your business. It's like that stuff hits for me, like all of that stuff, like it to me honestly, it's like it's her movie and everybody else is just kind of getting in the way of that story. And then yeah, like the stuff with Maxwell Lord is so, because we wait until the beginning, or I guess the end of the second act, to explain the monkey's paw thing, which is, I think, is obvious to the audience, but when we're dealing with this stuff that has consequences, we need to know what you and I, we talk about this all the time. We have to understand what's happening. We have to know what the cost is, what the rules are,
otherwise
of what's happening. Like it doesn't have to be what they do in the Marvel movies, where it's like where Thor comes down from the Rainbow Bridge and they're like, oh wow, magic, and he's like, what you call magic we call science. Right? Like it's, you just don't understand the science of it yet. But everything that we do is technology. Right?
This is a perfect place for me to talk about just that's the biggest flaw with Jupiter Ascending, is that it takes an hour for you to understand what the movie's actually about. And then you're like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Jupiter Ascending is a really great movie to bring up in context with this movie, because they are both an hour longer than they should be. But the thing about Jupiter Ascending is that like that world is interesting enough, and
Fair.
they go there with enough of that stuff that I'm like, man, I really wish that this was 3 movies and not 1. Like I really
Fair.
wish that we had 3 tight movies instead of 1 very long movie that tries to do everything, cuz I actually really like a lot about Jupiter Ascending. Like I
Oh yeah,
like Mila Kunis in it.
you can see what it could have been,
Yeah, I
right? When
like
you watch
Channing
it.
Tatum in it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the dragon guy is so cool. Like that is so cool. He's just
I do
like
not
looking like
remember the dragon
Goliath
guy.
from Gargoyles.
Oh
Like I
shit.
love it.
Anyway.
There's so many cool things in that movie. But there's also a lot of like, hey, we're gonna ask you to keep up with us as we blaze through some mythology here. And you're
Like
just like, but
massive mythology, and you're like,
yeah, like
okay.
you get to Act 3 of Jupiter Ascending, and they're like, so there's like some Dune style like religious political stuff going on with all of this, but we haven't explained any of it enough for you to understand what the hell is going on the first time you watch this movie. So you're gonna have to watch this movie 3 or 4 times in order to understand what's happening, but you're
You're
not
not gonna
going to
want
want to.
to. Yeah.
So as much as space rollerblades and gargoyles are enough to keep me entertained once, they're not enough to bring me back a second, third, or fourth time in order to understand what the hell. What's his name? Freddie Redmayne. Is that right? Yeah.
Freddie Redmayne. What?
Eddie
Redmayne.
Redmayne.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
Eddie?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah. I think so.
I
Oh, I forgot he was in that movie.
Yeah, he's the bad guy.
Well,
He's the nemesis. Like,
oh yeah. Well, I remember a family. There's like a family that's
yeah.
Nemesis. He's one of those. Oh, I didn't realize it was him. I've forgotten
Yeah.
so much about this movie because I remember watching it and just making
Exactly.
fun of it the whole time, and then not really. Oh yeah,
Case
Sean
in
Bean was
point.
in it. I totally
Yep.
forgot that.
Yep.
Oh man.
And remember how she can control bees, and that's like the thing
Yeah,
that
and
like
it's just
that's
so
like,
weird.
see, you're the special.
The special something
Yeah,
that doesn't
like,
do. Oh man,
you're
man! If anybody
queen.
just wants a good time, watch Jupiter Ascending.
Watch it with friends. I mean, like that's
Oh yeah,
hard to do.
don't watch it by yourself.
That's hard to
But
do.
it's
I
like,
watched it by myself, and I
but
was
you know
just
what's
like, what's
the
going
greatest?
on?
The greatest part of it is that for the whole first half of the movie, all I could do was be upset about the age makeup, and I was
Yeah.
like, why? Why is this a part of it? And then you find out halfway through the movie why they've aged the characters.
Yeah.
But it's the part that bothers me the most about that movie. It's the only thing I remember about that movie. I don't even remember. I remember that it discussed werewolf lore in a cool way. Like it
Yeah.
basically makes the thing about Jupiter Ascending that I really like is that it makes all like mythology based in aliens, and I think that that's a cool like take on stuff. Like that is a cool concept. But besides remembering that, the only other thing I remember is the age makeup. And I don't even remember, like, I remember why I remember that there's something to do with aging themselves or de-aging themselves. And I know that that's a huge part of the movie. Like, this is the point of the movie, but I don't actually remember.
Yeah, because they want to be they're immortal. They want to live forever, right?
Yeah,
But in order to do that, I think they have to like harvest the life force from Earth or something like that, right? Isn't that the whole point? It's basically the plot of Hitchhiker's Guide, but without any of the fun of Hitchhiker's Guide.
No, Hitchhiker's Guide is way less, like way more mundane.
No, I know, but it's just like aliens are just using, like they're not even using Earth in that. They just demolish it to build a highway.
Yeah.
But that's why it's just like it's aliens beyond our comprehension that are just using us as a resource.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what I say. It's the same plot as Hitchhiker's Guide. And then with he's a dog person and she can control bees, and there's a gargoyle man. Anyways, Jupiter Ascending.
I gotta Google this gargoyle man. I don't remember the gargoyle man, but yeah. Anyways,
I
derailed.
No, it's all good. I mean, like, if better than us talking about politics, right?
I feel like that is true. I do love that it's a space opera. Like that's very specifically what Jupiter
Yeah.
Ascending is billed at. But I will say that not once did they sing. I don't think they sing in it. Do they sing in it?
No.
I don't think they sing.
No,
So
but it
people
was
use
very
the term
much
space opera.
it was very much the
liberally.
Wachowskis trying to do Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which they were upfront about.
But it had so much potential to do something really cool.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest thing. I remember watching and being like, of all the things that you could have used CG on, why did you choose these things? Like I remember being like, what a weird use of your budget for that rather than aging the humans appropriately. If that was so important. Like,
here's another idea. Just cast older people.
Yeah.
And then just do a magic thing where the old person turns into the young person. And we'll all be a lot more impressed when...
Actually, that is true. It's way more impressive to see like an older person
performances match than when you just do CG or makeup. Like to me, like I don't understand why. Like that's what we used to do in movies back in like the 80s and earlier, is that you would just cast two people to play the two different ages. And then you would just have a scene where something happens and they transform, right? But that's always something that like there's a better way to do this than with CG. Although at the same time, if you do it well, like Steve Rogers at the end of Endgame, it's great, but that required a lot, and it also was like, hey, here's 2 minutes of it.
Yeah, and I will say because Harry Potter didn't do it well, so it all like I feel like it all depends. So we're
that's also
to different places. So
that's also like almost a decade apart, isn't it? Like when was the last Harry Potter
true.
movie, and then when it was...
Oh, that's so upsetting. Are they going to reboot Harry Potter soon? Because that makes me really sad.
They absolutely are. I think we are probably the key here is that J.K. Rowling is toxic right now, and so
you can't.
I don't think that anybody would go anywhere near it at the moment. I think that they'll put out this last awful Fantastic Beasts movie, and then they're going to take an extended hiatus from Wizarding World stories.
They need to make it so that the characters are old enough that they can come back as professors. I think once that's
the actors.
There. Yeah, the actors.
Yeah. I think that what you are most likely to see is at some point in the distant future, probably no less than 5 years from now, but hopefully around 10 years from now, is to see like an HBO Max series.
Well, isn't that what they're doing with Lord of the Rings? Are they doing an HBO
No, the
series?
Lord of the Rings series is not the books, as far as I know. I think it's other stories.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so
hey, in similar vein to Jupiter Ascending, I do just have to give a shout out to Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, another intensely expensive science fiction movie that just doesn't quite work. Have you seen Valerian?
I still haven't seen it because I have not heard good things.
But it's worth watching in the exact same way that Jupiter Ascending is worth watching, except for in Jupiter Ascending, the relationship between the two characters was at least watchable, and it's the least watchable thing in Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Like, actually, I think the movie would be straight up an okay movie if they had cast anyone else in those two roles.
Yeah,
because it's straight up just the chemistry between the two of them. It just
is weird to me, especially because I know I am familiar with the source material for Valerian, which like the lead characters in that are very much like your prototypical heroine, like in terms of like the way that they look, and they are like they should have been they should have been Channing Tatum and Mila Kunis.
Oh man, I wonder what would have happened if you had swapped the leads from those two movies. Man, it would have been.
But this is the thing: is that like Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne, like you could not have chosen two actors who have less chemistry with any other human being on the planet, much less
and
each
then
other.
putting to each other. Oh, that's totally what it is. Yeah, it's like if you had chosen one of them, maybe they could have been saved by the other person.
Yeah,
But you're right.
but the both of them, it's like you're yeah, you're it's like if you play like something discordant with to juxtapose it with something harmonious, and you're like, oh, there's something there, right?
Right.
But as
Yeah.
opposed to doing that, they were like, no, we've got two discordant noises and we're just gonna play them loudly at each other. And it's like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like I don't know.
It's you should watch it because I'd love to talk about it because I haven't seen, I actually might rewatch it. But it is really, it's so fascinating. And this is the thing too, and I think that mostly it's because the only genre that I really care about when people muck it up is science fiction. Because I'm kind of like anything else, I'm kind of like, I'm not as invested. But for me, I'm like, all I want to do is make science fiction television and like big budget science fiction things. So when people get the world handed to them and they just don't pay attention to like small things, that it's like you can't have been watching your dailies and thought that these people held this film together. Like you can't it just ruins the rest of this beautiful rich story that you're like, what is happening? Anyways,
well, you know, I think because it's Luc Besson, right? So
yeah.
I think that you're like what you're seeing with Valerian is him trying to go back to the Fifth Element and recapture that.
Yeah.
But the thing about the Fifth Element that works, I'm pained to say it, is Bruce Willis, right?
Of course. Because
Bruce Willis, I love Bruce Willis as an actor. Like I think I love a lot of his performances. He's a by all accounts an awful human being, but not in the like you know, Trump supporting anti-mask type of way that we have to deal with a lot of these terrible people in Hollywood right now. But just in the way that like he's a real like megalomaniac on set, and it's like he's the type of guy that's like, don't look at me, like I'm the star of the movie, don't talk to me. Like I'll show up and I'll do my thing because I'm Bruce Willis. And it's like, well, you are Bruce Willis, but you could at least be a decent guy about it. It's like if Bruce Willis blew up on a set, if he blew up on a set the way that Tom Cruise did a little while ago, everybody would be like, oh, Bruce Willis being a colossal jerk like usual. But Tom Cruise, who by all accounts, even though he is also a very problematic human being, by all accounts is a fantastic person to work for, right?
And so but that's
when he blows up, you're like he's a hero in that moment,
like,
right? You're like, he's saying everything that every one of us wants to say to people, which is like, put your damn mask on, because when you screw this up, people are gonna lose their livelihoods. Like so you're like, oh, like here comes Tom Cruise, who is also not just a charismatic actor, but also a good person to work for, a good person to work with on set, a collaborative storyteller by all accounts, as opposed to Bruce Willis, who's very much like, anyways, he's the thing that makes that movie work.
But there's things about Bruce Willis I do just like I like what you're saying there too, where he's like not a great human being, but not in the way that he should be ostracized from society, but just in the way that he should be like a better person.
Yeah, he just he just needs to be less of a jerk.
That in this day and age, that there are like things.
There's a difference between
there's
a difference between being difficult to work with, and and I mean like some of the accounts of Bruce Willis on set is like it borders on abusive behavior, so that's its own thing. But there's a difference between that and someone who uses their platform to amplify hate speech. Like that, there's a very big difference there. And so I don't want Bruce Willis to be canceled. I just want him to take some sensitivity training.
He's also not doing well, I think, as a human being. I think he's like a raging alcoholic and is not.
I think he's got some issues.
Hey, fun fact. Luc Besson was married to Mila Jovovich, and right around the time Fifth Element came out, and that makes me feel real icky. Like, did he put her in the film because he wanted to marry her, or did he marry her after she was in the film?
Well, I think really, you would have to talk to them about that.
I know.
And I'm kind of in a place in my life right now where I want that to be their personal business.
I mean, it can be their
You know what I
personal
mean?
business.
All these pictures of Ben Affleck being pissed off because people just like stand out in front of his house and take pictures of him picking up his Dunkin' Donuts order. It just like, it makes me really mad at the world.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
Because like, I think that Ben Affleck has enough going on in his own head that he has to fight with in order to be a decent human being, which like, there's an example of a guy that I think is very troubled and has a lot of issues, substance and abuse and that sort of thing, that but wants to be a good person. Like, I think genuinely like wishes that he were better than he is. I and then here's the paparazzi just making his life that much harder. Yeah, go. I think that kind of behavior is some of the worst behavior that we've evolved into as human beings.
Is the like the weird stalking thing?
The
of,
tabloid
like,
news TMZ Perez Hilton stalking aspect. Yeah, like that stuff is
I don't
just
know
like,
why we care so much about famous people's lives.
The thing about it that drives me nuts is that we have such unfettered access to so many celebrities now because of social media, and yet it's still not good enough. We have to like we gotta see their colonoscopy videos, you know, like that, like the whole. And I think that like social media plays into this, because like I saw an account today that was, I can't remember who it was for and what it was about, but it's like these accounts that are like obsessed with a specific actor or a specific artist, right? And it's like, oh, this Twitter account is dedicated to so and so, and it's just like, it's so and so updates, right? And it's like, oh, they went to the store and they got a sandwich. Okay, that's not really interesting to me, but I'm also not obsessed with anybody.
How do I know which sandwich to buy myself if I don't know what sandwich?
I think like that's the key to it, right? But like I'll go. Ben Schwartz is a great example of a celebrity that whenever he talks, I'm like, hey, what's up? Like, what are you doing? Right.
But he's got his own Twitter and Instagram, so you can just
that's the point, is that like what he gives me, his jokes and stuff, and his like, hey, I'm in the airport and I'm going past a Sonic the Hedgehog poster, and check it out, that's me, and I'm in a movie with Jim Carrey and it's really crazy, and I'm like, that's awesome. I love that I get to be a part of your experience in that way. But I love it because he's like, hey, this is my experience, come along for the ride, right? Like, I like that stuff, and I'm becoming very exhausted by the especially because we find out that so much of this stuff is bogus or made worse, like exacerbated by the paparazzi, like the whole, like the Saved by the Bell thing, like that.
What's Saved by the Bell thing?
Saved by the set of Saved by the Bell was like the least dramatic ever. Like, of all of the things in the 90s, like the set of Saved by the Bell was like, all the parents were there constantly, and many of them were like,
that's cool.
Like, the dramatic thing was that they were like, hey, stop, they have to go do their homework now, right? Like that sort of thing of like no, you're not going to get around these rules, they're there for a reason, right? And Mark Paul Gosselaar has a podcast now, Zach to the Future, where he's going through he's going through with Dashiell Driscoll, who Driscoll did the oh man, is it Funny or Die or College? I can't remember, but he did the Zach Morris's Trash web series, where he went through episodes and was like, this is why Zach Morris is a bad guy. Like, and Dashiell Driscoll is now one of the writers on the new Saved by the Bell series. And so Dashiell and Mark Paul have a podcast where they are going through episode by episode, like we did for Arrow. Like most of the podcasts that I have done, like they're going through episode by episode, talking about the episodes and bringing on guests and stuff like that, and like the other actors and that sort of thing. And he talks about what it was like a lot. And it's so funny because whenever Dustin Diamond comes up, they're always like very careful about what they say, because
Right.
Dustin Diamond's been
Okay.
in and out of jail.
Yeah.
Actually, apparently, I think it was in the news that he's sick. I don't know if it
Oh,
was,
I didn't know that. Oh,
I
but
don't remember if it was like
yeah.
cancer or something like that, um, but I saw that on social media the other day. But he's had a troubled life. He's had a difficult life. But whenever they talk about him, they like Mark Paul especially talks about him in um a very gracious way. Like he only ever says nice stuff about him. He only like they really talk a lot about how like he's like the core of like the comedic heart of the show, that like without him it probably wouldn't have worked, because his physical comedy, like his slapstick comedy and his timing was so good, and his impersonation,
Right.
like they talk about him in such a positive way. But the reality of the situation is that Dustin Diamond said tons of stuff that was apparently straight up false. Like he sold stories
Oh.
to tabloids
Oh,
to make
jeez.
money because he didn't have a career after Saved by the Bell, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um
Interesting.
so he was basically like selling bogus stories to the tabloids, and that to the point that like there was a book that was published that was like the unauthorized story of Saved by the Bell that they then turned into a TV movie
Oh, I do
that's
remember
like
that. Yeah. Yeah.
where
Yeah.
like everybody's having sex on set, and like they were all doing drugs, and Mark Paul Gosselaar was a real jerk, and like all of these like super dramatic stories that are all that all basically stem from these false stories that Dustin Diamond was putting out there. So like the cast of Saved by the Bell has every right to just trash talk him, but they don't.
Right.
And like on this podcast, they never do. They only ever say good stuff about him, and everybody that's been on so far has just said good stuff about him. Um, and it's so interesting to me. But it is like that's the dark side of that paparazzi tabloid celebrity obsession stuff. Where like I want to know behind the scenes stories too, but I want to like because obviously I'm listening to Zach to the Future. It's one of my favorite podcasts right now. Um, but I want like I want it. I want to hear it straight from the people, right? Like I want to hear their story. I don't want somebody to tell me gossip about, so and so did blah blah blah. Like I it just, that stuff exhausts me now. I'm just
Yeah.
too old for it, I guess. But I don't know. There's a lot of people online that like the whole Adam Driver obsession thing. It's like, look, I
It's weird.
I get being enamored with the performer. I don't understand the threatening his wife,
What?
right?
People
Yeah,
threaten his wife?
yeah, because they're like, oh, you don't deserve him. You don't
Wow.
like because they have like this weird diluted perspective of like, oh, he belongs with me, or
Huh.
if I can't have him, nobody can have him. It's like that, but it's
Wow.
just social media. I don't think so. Not social media itself, but the way that many human beings use social media really distorts these people's perspectives.
Right.
Um, and honestly,
Interesting.
I think that we don't understand the power of social media yet as a civilization, and we'll look back on it in 100 years and go, whoa, man, if there's still a civilization, if there is,
If social media hasn't destroyed us by then.
if we have a civilization in 100 years that is not like a rebuilt civilization from the ashes of this one, that looks back on the early 2000s, like 2000 through 2030, and doesn't go like, oh man, I can't believe we survived social media,
Right.
like before it was regulated and there were some reasonable and moderate rules put in place about what corporations can and can't do with this power.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because at the moment we expect them to govern themselves. We expect them to which the thing about this that is very interesting to me, and everybody makes it about free speech, and we're not going to get into politics with it. This is purely about like sort of social responsibility. when it comes to movies, when it comes to video games, when it comes to comic books, all of the other media that we produce has some sort of ratings board, essentially.
Right.
They determines what kind of content this is. And that like even with literature, there's a reason why you can't walk into a Chapters, or I assume a Barnes and Noble, and see triple X, like specifically explicit smut on the shelves. It's not there. You got to go into an adult bookstore for it, right? And that's not to say that that stuff shouldn't exist. If that's your jam, I'm more than happy for you, and like, go for it. If you want to write smut, if you want to read smut, if you want to do whatever you want. I don't use the word smut as a derogatory term. It's just a classification. I like, but there are reasons why we do that, right? There are reasons why movies are rated G, PG, PG-13.
Yeah, we have ways. I will say that not all smutty books are in adult bookstores. You just need to go to the romance section of any normal.
Of course
I don't understand how little boys haven't decided that romance novels are the best thing ever. There's like so much sexiness in romance. Anyways, I guess because they have to wade through all of the other stuff.
Yeah, there's a gender dynamic thing there that is murky water to get into. But I think that the masculine proclivity is visual, as whereas the feminine proclivity is something a little bit more hard to nail down.
Yeah, no, I very much actually
works
that's very
better.
much. Yeah.
Prose works better for what I think
women have better imaginations when it comes to certain things, and so
I don't think that's it. I think that what drives the engine is it's a different kind of fuel. And I think that there's evolutionary reasons for it, right? Like that's a whole topic for a whole episode. I think we would need to bring somebody on who actually knows what they're talking about if we didn't want to talk out of our asses on something like that.
That's true. Me and my friend Emily talk about romance novels like all the time, and about like, anyways. We can. I'll make Emily guest host with me one time on.
But all of that to circle back and say that I personally think that social media should be regulated by the government. If the government is doing what it's supposed to be doing, if it's democratically elected people who represent their constituents, which means that it's not them making rules to tell us what to do. It's us making rules to all agree what should be done.
Yeah.
Because not because we should be telling other people what to do, but just that we should be moderating the way in which people do things. And because if left to their own devices, corporations gonna corporate. They're just gonna do what makes, like, what is the clearest, quickest, most destructive path to profit. That's what they're gonna do. That's what Facebook's gonna do. It's what Twitter's gonna do. It's what Instagram, which is also Facebook, and that's case in point. Like the fact that Facebook owns Instagram, it owns WhatsApp, it owns half of the stuff that we call social media, and then Google owns most of the rest of it, and then you got Instagram and Tumblr that are kind of outliers. But
I mean, we've talked about this before. People should just watch The Social Dilemma, and
I still haven't watched that. But
what? Oh, come on. But like, that's like a core part of it, is these people that have created these social media empires are like, oh boy, people need to watch the regulation on these things. Like, that's like the core takeaway from The Social Dilemma is, why aren't we regulating social media in the same way that we regulate other forms of like just anything, right? Like of media, like that we don't recognize that it's so far beyond a tool of communication that it needs to have, and the problem is we don't know how to regulate it because we can't quantify exactly what it is. Well, because the moment you start trying to put like rules around it, people start yelling free speech, right?
Well,
And it's like
like
that's not what it is at its core. It's a tool to sell us to the highest bidder, right?
yeah,
So it's just
and the reality of it in terms of like rights and freedoms and that sort of thing is that it's no different than using a telephone. I can get on the
yeah.
telephone and I can say whatever I want, right? Like my phone company can't stop me from doing that. But if I start using my phone to make crank calls or order pizzas to whatever, like, or more importantly, start calling people up and leaving threatening voicemails and stuff like that, then my phone provider is well within their rights to shut my phone off. And there are actually also laws to stop me from getting away with that. And yet with social media, that doesn't exist necessarily. It's left up to Twitter, Facebook, and etc. to moderate that themselves,
And
right?
then you're relying on them to actually do that, which is to say,
Yeah, and to me, like it's a very odd thing that like they um the way in which social media has been used recently in the last few years, which is very dangerous, very clearly contributing to dangerous things. That it's not nobody is in government is going like, man, we need to enforce this in the same way that we would enforce this if somebody was writing threatening letters uh
right.
or like I said, calling people up on the phone and saying these things. Like we would trace that to its source, we would arrest that person, and we would charge them with a crime. Right? And yet you can get on Twitter and you can say, I hate Jews and they should all die. And people are like, well, hey, free
Jeez.
speech, man. Free speech. And it's like, well, but if you called up Jewish people and said, I hate you, I think that you should die, then the police would be at your door the next day. Right?
Right.
Like it to me,
Yeah.
it's such a weird thing. I will use that example for myself because I can.
Interesting.
I have
Yeah.
license to.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, like it's such a weird thing to me. And I think that we'll look back on this period of time in the same way that we currently look back on like the 50s and 60s with toxic waste, right? Like with as industry became more and more uh, uh I guess as it like proliferated and manufacturing and stuff like that became more and more about like the mass um uh plastics and nuclear power became a thing, and like toxic waste became a thing, and
Right.
companies were just like, we don't know what to do with this, so we're just going to dump it in lakes. And then the rest of the world went like, you can't do that, you can't just dump your garbage wherever you want, specifically not these things that actually cause harm to human beings and make the planet a less habitable place. So we started putting laws and regulations in place to prohibit that behavior. It still
Right.
happens. You can't get away from it happening because, like I said, corporations are going to take the most
Incorporate.
clear cut straight line to profit that they can. It's as a corporate entity, that is like that's evolutionarily what they do. That's how capitalism works. but but it's our job as citizens to ensure that that's not what happens, right? And so we should all be standing up and saying like, hey, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, these platforms should all be regulated based on a common code of ethics that we all agree on already, that we all already say is how we're supposed to live in a civilized society, because we already apply it to these other pieces of communication and media. Right?
Yeah, I
Like
think that's the core there too. Like, it's not like there isn't something that we can look at and be like, "Hey, we have
it's
decided as
not
a
new.
society
Yeah.
that this is how we
everybody
should conduct
everybody
ourselves."
talks about it with this language of like, oh, it's the Wild West. No, it's not. It's just a new version. It's an evolution of these other things that we already do. It's
Yeah.
just like it's like saying that Messenger on Facebook is a completely new invention as opposed to text messaging on your phone. It's like, no, these are the same thing. They are evolutions of the same thing. But anyways, I guess we did get political, but without getting into like the actual specifics
politics
of it.
We were talking about, yeah.
But like I said, this is it's less about the consequences of what's happening right now in the world, and more about like the social responsibility that I think that a lot of us are kind of ignoring at the moment. But
we talked a good
deal
about
society.
some nerdy stuff. I hope that we have faith in society, that science fiction will continue to show us a world that we should try to be wary of as we repeat the mistakes of our past. And
so not to get too much into WandaVision, but or the MCU, because we'll have time for that when WandaVision is done. I'll just say this: the first 2 episodes are phenomenal. I cannot wait for Thursday night. Like I'll probably watch it Friday morning, but
when the new ones come out.
When the new ones come out, I love it. I think it's a fantastic series. I don't think it's going to be for everybody.
And I'm super confused. But I believe it. The thing that was awesome about WandaVision was that I watched it because I'm still at my family's house. I'm going to be leaving back home hopefully soon. But I could watch it with them, and they were like, I don't understand. This is just like 60 sitcoms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep.
But there's an undercurrent in that already, and there's some stuff coming out from the next Spider-Man movie. Sort of the aftermath of the Mysterio stuff from Far From Home, right? Because like the end of that movie is Mysterio putting out this false information through a right-wing media source that Spider-Man is really the bad guy, right? Like this fake news thing. And there are a lot of people speculating that the multiverse thing is going to be a big part of stuff going forward, but the real enemy in the MCU that they're going to tackle, like the sort of through line in terms of like modern storytelling and allegory, like if you look at Phase 1 did a lot of stuff with terror. It did a lot of like sort of our post 9/11 world. And if you look at it like that, like the world that we're in right now, the way that information is manipulated to control us is like it's weaponized, right? And so if you're going to tell a modern story about modern supervillains, what are they going to do? They're going to weaponize the media in order to fight our superheroes, because it's something that we can relate to. So there are a lot of people thinking that like that this is going to be a through line, that a bunch of the stories are going to be about this, which like it's obvious in Spider-Man already. The last movie sets that up. The way that Wanda is clearly being manipulated in WandaVision in some way, like it's so unclear what's happening right now, but if anything, like it's clear that something is going on in that way, and that like this sitcom media is being used to like pacify her in some way. It seems like they're getting into that these stories are going to be kind of superhero stories, but based on sort of the information age that we're in the middle of, and I think that could be really cool. Like there's some really great story, like there's fertile ground for storytelling there, and also more importantly, Marvel Comics living up to the legacy of Stan Lee in telling relevant stories about the world, like you say, like using science fiction to teach us a lesson about how we can do better than what we're currently doing. And that was always Stan Lee's goal. That's why the X-Men exist. That's why Spider-Man is Spider-Man. Like it's baked into these characters. It's baked into the Marvel universe. And I'm so happy to see that stuff is still there. Like that social relevance is still there, because they are the most consumed stories on the planet right now. It is our modern mythology, even more than Star Wars. And Star Wars doesn't have that at the moment. Star Wars is doing a lot of really cool stuff, but it does not have a moral core. And it's one of the reasons why it's having trouble finding its footing, in my opinion. it stands for nothing. The sequel trilogy stands for nothing. The Mandalorian stands for nothing. Like, they're telling good stories here and there,
but it's like, what
in
is the
Star
moral
Wars,
center
but
and what
like,
is
but
the
why? What's the point of telling these
right.
stories other than to retread the ground that we've already tread with the original Star Wars movies? Because the first three were about, I mean, the first one is about about Vietnam. That's a big part of it, and that's a through line all the way through to Return of the Jedi with the Ewoks. Like, it's like, and George Lucas has talked about that. That's not speculation. He's been very clear about that he started that storytelling in like a in the Vietnam era, and like the era of the Vietnam War, and was very influenced by that in his storytelling and who are the heroes and who are the villains. And then the prequels are very much about George Bush, like George W. Bush, and consolidation of power by corporations. I mean, like, it opens with the Trade Federation blockading a planet. Like, it's like,
Right.
that stuff could not be more overt. So as much as anybody wants to fault the prequels for whatever, like, they know what they're about. They know what they're about. And it's why those stories are meaningful even now. Like, now we're 20 years on. But with the sequel trilogy, I don't think I think Ryan had an idea of what he was doing with The Last Jedi, but
I mean, there's some stuff about I mean, we've talked about it before, but about like the entitled millennial man, and
it's
like that this
yeah,
world that has been given, this world that they believe is owed to them, right?
it
It's like what
yeah, that's it. That's in The Force Awakens for sure. And then there are some of those through lines that blend into the stories that Ryan Johnson was trying to tell, which, like, he definitely was telling a feminist story about um misogyny. Like they're
yeah
all these men talking down to women, and then the women looking at them sort of cross-eyed, and then doing the work anyways.
yeah
Like,
yeah
like, just
yeah yeah yeah
I yeah, like that couldn't be more apparent in that movie. But then Rise of Skywalker just completely undoes any goodwill that JJ
well, they
and
just
Lawrence
pretended that
Kasdan bought in The Force Awakens. Like, it
yeah.
just, yeah, the line "you have his power" couldn't be more problematic. Like, it just, and then sidelining Rose, trying to shoehorn in the story about Finn, and like, it just, yeah, they undo all the goodwill that they did with the first two movies in that third one, as a corporation, as a corporate entity, right? Like, because it just, like, and that's why I say, like, they, like, there are themes within the individual movies, and then even like within Rogue One and Solo, there's good stuff in those individual stories, but
Yeah.
as a whole, they don't know what they're trying to do. They don't know what although this new stuff with the High Republic seems to have a moral center to it, that the it's like their new publishing initiative with the comics and books and stuff. And it's in an era that takes place like 200 years before the Phantom Menace. And it seems very, very SJW focused, like, in a very pointed way, as if to say to a lot of the quote unquote Star Wars fandom, as they're called in circles, the fandom menace, is like, this is what Star
I
Wars
love
is
it.
about.
Yeah.
It's what it's always been about. And if you don't see that, then you don't truly understand Star Wars. So I don't know, maybe they're starting to figure that out, but they get away with more in the publishing and the animation than they do in the live action stuff, because obviously more eyes on the live action, so the corporate entity wants it to be digestible for everybody, including the alt-right. So that's problematic. It's problematic. It's an issue. It's a real, I really wish Disney would take a firm stance against fascism, but it is what it is.
Oh, we got so close. Okay. On that note, let's end on fascism.
Yeah, well, we take a firm
Taking
stance against fascism.
stance against fascism.
So, if that's important to you on Friday, if you're listening to this on Friday or after, and that has become a very important thing, know that we stand with everybody who stands against fascism. You might even call us anti-fascist in some form.
In some regards.
But yeah. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody is happy and safe and healthy and wearing masks and washing their hands and getting the goddamn vaccine. Look, if you are given the opportunity to get vaccinated, do not hesitate.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just do it, because if you've been called or selected or whatever, by whatever means, just do it, because there's a lot of reports coming in that people being hesitant about it or rejecting it is actually slowing the efficiency of the distribution models. So
dear.
if you have the ability to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you are given the opportunity, say yes and run, don't walk to get vaccinated. Because everybody who does get vaccinated just makes the world that much safer for everybody else. So we're so close. We're so close to being able to go back to the movie theater and enjoy movies again.
Yeah.
Please, I want to see Fast and the Furious 9. I want to see Black Widow so bad. I need to see these movies. So don't screw this up for me, everybody.
You heard it here, folks. Do
Another personal favor to Thunderquack: get vaccinated as soon as you can.
Yes.
And be nice to healthcare professionals, because they're doing everything that they can.
Yeah.
They deserve our respect, love, and patience. Cool.
Yeah.
I think we did a good job here.
Yeah.
This evening.
Thanks for listening. I think it's fun. It's been fun. It's been grand, and we'll see you on the other side of inauguration, I guess.
We'll be back next week, and hopefully we'll have more geeky stuff to talk about and less politics than last week's episode. So hopefully everything goes less chaotically than some individuals want it to. And the next episode we will be talking. The next episode we record, one way or another, Donald Trump will not be the president anymore.
There you go.
And that's the reality of it, is that Joe Biden will be the president. There will be an adult in the White House. And which I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, that's good news for everybody. And hopefully the world can start to go back to some sense of decency and I don't know, just we can argue about Star Wars. Let's save our energy for that instead of arguing about the other stuff that we've been arguing about.
That'd be nice.
Awesome. Thank you everybody for listening. We will be back next week with another episode. I know I told you guys that I was going to have the Patreon exclusive episode out last week. It didn't happen. But I'll try and get it out this week. But if not, you'll get it. You'll get it eventually. Yeah. Relax. But thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Stay safe, everyone. Wash your hands and be kind to one another.
Follow the Thunderquack Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching the Thunderquack Podcast. You can support us in 3 ways. First, by heading to the podcast service of your choice and leaving a rating and review. Second, by going to store.thunderquack.com to pick up some merch from your favorite podcasts. And last but not least, by heading to patreon.com/thunderquack to kick in with your monthly pledge of support and get cool rewards like early access, ad-free episodes, and extended episodes. The Thunderquack Podcast is the official podcast of thunderquack.com. Head to thunderquack.com to discover more great podcasts.